C.1.2 variant is a variant where there's been multiple mutations that includes mutations which predict for the virus to be more transmissible, as well as mutations which are considered to be important in allowing the virus to become relatively resistant to at least the antibody activity that is induced either by past infection or by vaccines. The variant itself dates back to sometime in May when it was first identified. And I think importantly, around about the same time, the Delta variant also seeded in South Africa. And between the two, the Delta variant very much outcompeted the C.1.2 variant in entrenching itself in South Africa, so much so that now 95% of all of the infections that are occurring is a consequence of the Delta variant. So at the moment, there are theoretical concerns around the C.1.2, but from a clinical perspective, right now, there doesn't seem to be too much of a problem as to whether this will actually materialize into causing a disease that is very different compared with what we have experienced in the past. So it's something that we need to keep an eye on, but certainly nothing that we should be concerned about immediately. I think there's much more important challenges currently upon us in South Africa as well as elsewhere in Africa.
And also quite disturbing is the vaccination rate in Africa. We're still around 2%, the whole of the population on the continent. How will the new deal that's been negotiated between Aspen and Johnson & Johnson improve vaccine equity on the continent?
Yeah, correct. So right now, of the 5.4 billion doses of vaccine that have been administered, only about 78 million have been administered in Africa, and of those, about 40 million just between two countries, which is South Africa and Morocco. So vaccine access is a major problem. So the most recent news where the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that is being filled and finished in South Africa will now be targeted for the African market. I think that is extremely promising. Johnson & Johnson estimate that they would be able to produce at least 420 million doses by February of 2022. So over the next few months, we do anticipate a larger flow of Johnson & Johnson vaccine into the African continent, which would be an important stepping stone to increasing the rate of immunization compared to the current dismal performance in the majority of countries on the African continent.
Also, we have this issue of a vaccine hesitancy and the slow vaccination rate, as you have mentioned. Which is more disturbing to you, the slow rate of vaccination or the rate at which new variants are popping up?
So certainly not the rate that new variants are popping up. I think the rate at which new variants are popping up is something that is going to continue to transpire, irrespective of whether we're vaccinating or not. The important thing is that all of these vaccines still maintain their effectiveness when it comes to protecting against severe disease and death. So there might be some compromise when it comes to how we already work against infection and mild illness, but our goal is about saving lives with vaccines. So from our effectiveness against severe disease perspective, these variants up to now haven't been too much of a problem when it comes to what we expect of vaccines to achieve. So I think a big issue in Africa when it comes to vaccine hesitancy is that it's a combination of access and vaccine hesitancy. And I think it's much of the hesitancy, paradoxically, is actually driven because of lack of access. Because the less access there is, the more skeptical people become about the need to be vaccinated in the first place, in addition to which it lends itself to a lot of misinformation being peddled.
It isn't just lack of vaccine that's slowing down vaccination on the continent. Vaccine hesitancy has a role to play, as you've rightly mentioned. But to what extent? And do you think a made-in-Africa vaccine will alter people's attitudes towards taking vaccines?
Yeah, so firstly, to start off with, Africa is obviously extremely heterogeneous. And there's some countries, an example, that have even suffered or really struggled to increase vaccination of children because of cultural, religious issues. So it's difficult to pronounce for the whole of Africa, and I think the reasons for vaccine hesitancy would differ across the continent. In South Africa, the most recent poll shows that 80% of South Africans would be willing to be vaccinated. So would an African vaccine actually assist the problem? I think the availability of a vaccine that's coming from Africa would make inroads, but certainly governments need to do a lot when it comes to communicating the message about the importance of COVID-19 and the importance of vaccines for us to be able to get back to a relatively normal lifestyle.
Dr. Shabir Madhi, Professor of Vaccinology at the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa.